Got such a rich program that we want to get going, and I want to say thank you to all of you. We've got a wonderful audience here, people that really focus on this. I was, when Mike Wallace and I first started this thing, we thought maybe we'd get 4 people and a dog that would show up for one of these things, but there's a lot more interest, and I'm really excited by that. I think that's a very good thing. Let me say sincere thanks to our partners and colleagues in this with the Bipartisan Policy Center, the Idaho National Labs, and of course Third Way. We partnered broadly here for a very important reason, that America's future really depends on a broadly based consensus. It isn't possible to develop that consensus just within one organization. We need to reach out. We need to develop a framework, a network of people that want to share this in common purpose. And also, I would say there has to be a broader framework for now understanding the future of nuclear energy. You know, this has been viewed far too narrowly in recent years, and whether it's an alternative, a low-carbon alternative, or whether it's, you know, competitive against cheap gas. I mean, all of this debate, and it's all very important. We'll get into that today. But we need to have a broader frame of reference for this. We have to bring back the perspective we once had when we saw nuclear energy in the context of security and proliferation prevention and working with alliances, establishing a normative framework in the world, you know, where nuclear energy can be pursued safely. I mean, all of this becomes an important backdrop for how we're going to deal with this very, very important issue. And so we've got a very rich day. We're going to have a lot of material. To say, you all you're part of this. You, with your questions, have to make this an exciting and interesting day. I do want to say that on behalf of our 2 keynote speakers, for differing reasons, they're going to be somewhat constrained on their ability to answer questions. There are some ongoing investigations and things of this nature that may not make it possible, but we will see what we can do. And so we want to get started with this now. It's my pleasure to introduce Christine Savinicki. She is, of course, on the Nuclear Regulatory Commission. We share a parallel but not overlapping background, being Hill staffers together. And of course, once in the family, you're always in the family when you do that. She's established herself as one of the genuine leaders thinking about nuclear energy and all its domains and dimensions here. And we're very glad to have her. Her bio is in the little program, so I'm not going to consume her time by reading anything like that to you, other than to say we're very lucky that she's serving at this hour. We're lucky to have her in government. We're lucky to have her here with us this morning. Would you please welcome Christine to the chair?
Good morning. Can you hear me in the back? Thank you for that acknowledgement. Well, good morning, everyone, and thank you, Dr. Hamre, for that very kind introduction and for drawing some association between yourself and me. That is a great honor to me and a compliment. Thank you. I am very pleased to be here, and let me begin by expressing how honored also I am to join a program of very distinguished speakers at this morning's event. And let me also add my greetings to the many friends and colleagues I have in the room. It's wonderful to have worked with you over the years and to see you here today. And I want to acknowledge mentors, and I use this term not in a light fashion, but visionaries on issues of nuclear that are here today, such as Senator Pete Domenici, Dr. Miller, other speakers and panelists here today. There are many people that I have basically learned at the knee of so many of you here in the room. Thank you for your mentorship and your leadership on these issues. The organizations that are sponsoring the event this morning, the Center for Strategic and International Studies, the Bipartisan Policy Center, the Idaho National Laboratory, and Third Way, have individually, and in some cases such as this event, collectively, been engaged over the course of recent years in advancing the public policy dialogue regarding nuclear energy. I would characterize it as a discussion or dialogue about its present, its future, the challenges it faces, and the potential that it holds. And in this way, these organizations have been working to bring additional structure and coherency to the disparate collection of issues surrounding nuclear's piece of our energy puzzle. And although to date I've not had the opportunity to engage with them in their undertaking, I've reflected on many of their conclusions that they have published thus far, and I intend to present this morning my perspectives on some of the key issues, as well as some additional thoughts from a regulator's point of view. I must note before I begin, however, that the views I will share with you are my own and may or may not reflect the policy views of the Nuclear Regulatory Commission as a whole. Speaking from the point of view of a nuclear safety regulator, I'll begin, of course, with the nuclear accident at Fukushima. As many in this audience are now aware, in the months following the accident, the Nuclear Regulatory Commission chartered a small internal panel of its own staff, and we termed that the Near-Term Task Force, to conduct a systematic and methodical review of NRC processes and regulations to determine whether the NRC should make additional improvements to the regulatory system and to make recommendations to the Commission directly for its policy consideration. The task force concluded that a sequence of events like the Fukushima accident is unlikely to occur in the United States, and some appropriate mitigation measures have already been implemented, reducing the likelihood of core damage and radiological releases. Therefore, continued operation and continued licensing activities do not pose an imminent risk to public health and safety. At the same time, however, the NRC's assessment of insights from the events at Fukushima Daiichi led us to conclude that additional requirements should be imposed on licensees to increase the capability of nuclear power plants to mitigate the effects of beyond design basis extreme natural phenomena. The Commission approved the NRC staff's prioritization of their recommendations into 3 categories or tiers. Tier 1 consists of actions to be taken without delay, and these actions are already underway. Tier 2 is the next set of recommendations to be dispositioned as soon as staff resources and certain categories of expertise become available and relevant information is gathered and analyzed. Tier 3 recommendations require that the staff conduct further study or undertake shorter-term actions first. On March 9th of this year, the Commission authorized the NRC staff to issue 3 immediately effective orders to U.S. commercial nuclear reactors as a component of our Tier 1 actions. The orders require additional measures to address beyond design basis extreme natural events, require enhancement of spent fuel pool water level indication instrumentation, and for plants with certain containment types, they require the installation of reliable hardened vents to remove decay heat and maintain control of containment pressure within acceptable limits following events that result in the loss of active containment heat removal capability or prolonged station blackout. In addition, the NRC issued an extensive request for information, which requires licensees to reevaluate seismic and flooding hazards at their sites. This description of activities addresses the static list of recommendations developed by the Near-Term Task Force, which reflects a body of knowledge in existence at one moment in time. As all of us know, the body of knowledge and understanding of events continues to grow as time progresses, subsequent to the accident. The NRC has continued to engage with plant operators through organizations such as the Institute for Nuclear Power Operations, INPO, and its global counterpart, the World Association for Nuclear Operations, and with the international community of regulators and governments, as reviews and investigations of the accident sequence and operator actions taken in response to that accident continues to come into greater clarity and focus. To bring attention to the various responses of regulators around the world, last month, the 75 nations, which are parties to the Convention on Nuclear Safety, convened the treaty's second, and I would note this is the second only in its history, the treaty's second extraordinary meeting to analyze the Fukushima accident. The convention itself had entered into force in 1996 with the purpose of further strengthening nuclear safety regimes after the accident at Chernobyl. This extraordinary meeting convened last month with 2 fundamental purposes. First, to converge on the most important technical areas on which national regulators should place their focus following Fukushima. And second, to discuss measures for improving the effectiveness of the Convention through either amending the Convention itself or its guidance. As also discussed at the Convention was a, quote, statement of principles for nuclear safety, which was developed recently through the G8 process. Although the final outcomes of the extraordinary meeting are yet to be documented in final form, it's my understanding that the following points are among the themes that emerged during the discussions. First, a key tenet of sustainable, safe, and secure national nuclear program is the establishment of a robust, effective, and independent regulator which operates in an open and transparent manner. Countries should review their regulatory programs to implement the lessons learned after Fukushima and to develop regulations and other mechanisms to anticipate, prevent, mitigate, and effectively respond to events in the future. Second, since the events of March 2011, countries have reviewed and enhanced, where appropriate, technical aspects of their regulatory programs, and governments have committed and are committed to continuous safety improvement. Third, the Fukushima accident has engendered the need for enhanced and expanded attention to cleanup and decommissioning. Governments are committed to both assisting and learning from Japan in this area. In my view, however, as the international community continues to cooperate on these topics, 3 additional outcomes merit consideration. First, now and moving forward, there is a need to normalize Japan lessons learned activities at the national, bilateral, and multinational levels into existing regulatory frameworks and practices to better utilize resources and ensure that new insights are sustainable. Second, it is time to formally recognize that the event has passed the phase of immediate crisis, and lessons learned responses now need to be prioritized with other ongoing matters no less important to safety, and in some cases, more so. And third, strong self-assessments need to be consistently encouraged, and frank and open discussion about issues, including following up on recommendations to address identified weaknesses in response to the accident, needs to occur. In support of lessons learned activities going forward here, the NRC and Department of Energy will also continue to coordinate our activities under a Memorandum of Understanding on Cooperative Nuclear Safety Research related to the Fukushima Daiichi accident study, which our organizations entered into last year. The essential elements of the scope of this cooperative effort are, first, to collect, verify, and document data on the accident, and second, to reconstruct the accident and its progression to assess the validity of severe accident modeling. This cooperation continues a long relationship between the NRC and Department of Energy, begun in our mutual origins in the Atomic Energy Commission, and continuing over the decades during which NRC has used and shared the infrastructure, hardware, and personnel at DOE's national laboratories. Much of our collaboration over the decades has been in the area of severe accident research. In fact, work early in my career at what was then called the Idaho National Engineering Laboratory took me occasionally to the facility housing the damaged fuel assemblies and core debris of the 3 Mile Island core, which was sent to Idaho for examination and experimentation to provide real-world validation about severe accident phenomena. NRC's work to advance severe accident understanding and to refine our models and computational tools is an unceasing and unending activity for us. Although these topics can be difficult to communicate well and understandably to the members of the public, as a safety regulator, we try and make efforts to communicate these concepts. A significant research program ongoing for a number of years now at NRC is our state-of-the-art reactor consequence analyses, or SORCA, activity. NRC began this work to refine our estimates of the potential health effects from severe accidents. SORCA's results are so central to our nuclear safety mission that the Commission itself directed the NRC staff to develop what we had labeled or termed a, quote, brochure, which would provide a plain language summary of SORCA's methods, results, and conclusions. Now, as an agency of engineers and scientists, I have to report to you that the brochure, once it was developed by the NRC staff, exceeds approximately 50 pages, so I do apologize for that. But I do want to recommend it to you. It's available on our website, and it does, I think, make good efforts towards the plain language part of the NRC's, the Commission's direction to the staff. And if I share with you, I want to share with you a summary of some of SORCA's key conclusions. I think you'll see why it was important to the Commission that the agency make an effort to provide some of these updated severe accident outcome conclusions in plain language. So I will share with you some of our outcomes from our state-of-the-art reactor consequence analysis work. The first is that we have our research concluded that when operators are successful in using available on-site equipment during the accidents analyzed in SORCA, they can prevent the reactor from melting or delay or reduce releases of radioactive material to the environment. Also, our SORCA analyses indicate that in all modeled accident scenarios, even if operators are unsuccessful in stopping the accidents progress more slowly and release much smaller amounts of radioactive material than was calculated in earlier studies done by NRC and the national laboratories. As a result, public health consequences from severe nuclear power plant accidents which were modeled in SORCA are smaller than previously calculated. Further, the delayed releases calculated provide more time for emergency response actions, such as evacuating or sheltering affected populations. For the scenarios analyzed, SORCA shows that emergency response programs, if implemented as planned and practiced, reduce the risk of public health consequences. Also, both mitigated, where operator actions are successful, and unmitigated, where operator actions are unsuccessful. So both the mitigated and unmitigated cases of all modeled severe accident scenarios in SORCA cause essentially no risk of death during or shortly after the accident, and SORCA's calculated longer-term cancer fatality risks for the accident scenarios analyzed are millions of times lower than the general U.S. cancer fatality risk. The reason that I have spent time communicating these SORCA results is that when you lay these alongside of the NRC staff's prioritization of post-Fukushima lessons learned, I think it's very easy to see a parallel and relationship from where the NRC has placed its priority to take regulatory action post-Fukushima, which is on those measures that have the greatest potential for safety enhancement and further risk reduction. In other words, our SORCA results reinforce the prioritization we've taken after Fukushima. Last month, the NRC also submitted its report to Congress on advanced reactor licensing. This report, which is also available on NRC's website, addressed the anticipated advanced reactor licensing scope for the next several decades. The report includes the overall research and development activities that should be conducted to support NRC reviews in anticipated of advanced reactor licensing scope, including updating and extending national consensus standards, the projected resource requirements for both experienced personnel and development of facilities, and the overall plan for utilization of both human capital and facilities between industry and the government to support these plans. The report quotes from the Commission's policy statement on the regulation of advanced reactors issued in 2008, which states, regarding advanced reactors, the Commission expects as a minimum at least the same degree of protection of the environment and public health and safety and the common and defense and security that is required for current generation light water reactors. Furthermore, the Commission expects that advanced reactors will provide enhanced margins of safety and/or use simplified, inherent, passive, or other innovative means to accomplish their safety and security functions. The report describes how the NRC is conducting new reactor licensing activities, refining the processes for overseeing new reactor construction, and addressing the significant policy and technical issues related to the licensing of advanced reactor designs. The focus in 2012 and the near term is on completing the licensing activities for design certification and combined license applications now pending before NRC, expanding and carrying out our construction inspection program in Georgia and South Carolina at the sites under construction, and beginning review of applications for advanced reactor designs. To facilitate that review, the NRC is developing a regulatory approach that supports, we hope, unique aspects of advanced design. This includes identifying and resolving policy, technical, and licensing issues, developing regulatory strategies to support efficient and timely reviews, engaging the Department of Energy, designers, and potential applicants in pre-application interactions, and coordinating our activities with stakeholders. One initiative NRC has undertaken to streamline its review of new applications involves integrating the use of risk insights to create design-specific review plans and standards for light water, small modular reactor designs, and the development over the longer term of risk-informed, performance-based regulatory structure for non-light water reactor designs. For awareness and insights regarding advanced reactor licensing in other countries, the NRC continues to be involved in the international nuclear community, as exemplified by the agency working closely with the IAEA and regulators in other countries participating in the Multinational Design Evaluation Program, or MDEP. NRC's involvement in MDEP has been a very constructive engagement for us. If you're not familiar with this program, it's an international initiative that aims to improve the efficiency and effectiveness of regulatory design reviews of new commercial reactors. Staff from NRC and representatives from the nuclear regulatory authorities of 9 other countries and the IAEA currently participate. One of the most significant of MDEP's many contributions, in my view, is its objective of increasing the multinational convergence of codes, standards, guides, and practices, and safety goals. And although a key concept throughout the work of MDEP is that national regulators retain sovereign authority for licensing and regulatory decisions, the MDEP collaboration, in my view, can go a long way towards advancing the international harmonization of regulatory reviews of nuclear technologies. Of course, NRC's involvement in groups like MDEP and others would not be possible unless previous commissions had begun to build the necessary human capital to support NRC's future and current workload. Cultivating the next generation of nuclear professionals is a shared obligation. To this end, NRC carries out its nuclear education program, which includes scholarships and fellowships in nuclear science and engineering, which supports faculty development grants to support probationary tenure-track faculty during the first 6 years of their career in the fields of nuclear engineering, health physics, and radiochemistry. And the NRC also has a support program for trade school and community college scholarships at post-secondary educational institutions. So in concert with similar efforts that are occurring and carried out by the Department of Energy and the industry, I would characterize that targeted investments have been and are being made in the development of the nuclear workforce of the future. Before I conclude my remarks, I'd like to touch on the issue of waste disposal, which is a topic that is discussed in each of the reports by CSIS, the Idaho National Laboratory Third Way, and the Bipartisan Policy Center, and which is likely to be addressed by, I believe, nearly every speaker who will be speaking this morning at the event. Now, this is a topic I generally leave to others. I think principally the discussion and dialogue among elected officials in the Congress and state and local government and policymakers in the administration is where this dialogue is most active. And I also leave this topic to others because, in my view, the NRC's role in this discussion is narrow and clear, at least in my mind. However, in June of this year, the U.S. Court of Appeals for the D.C. Circuit found that the NRC had violated the National Environmental Policy Act in issuing its 2010 update to its waste confidence decision and accompanying temporary storage rule. The court stated that, quote, "The Commission apparently has no long-term plan other than hoping for a geologic repository. If the government continues to fail in its quest to establish one, then spent nuclear fuel will seemingly be stored on site at nuclear plants on a permanent basis." The court went on to state the Commission can and must assess the potential environmental effects of such failure. In response to this, or among other actions, the court specifically struck down the waste confidence update's finding that the NRC had made that reasonable assurance exists that sufficient geologic repository capacity will be available for the disposal of high-level waste and spent fuel when necessary. That was NRC's finding. The court vacated both the update and the rule and remanded the case for further proceedings consistent with their opinion. So in response, in August, the NRC issued an order in multiple proceedings acknowledging that, quote, waste confidence undergirds certain agency licensing decisions, in particular new reactor licensing and reactor license renewal. In recognition of our duties under the law, we will not issue licenses dependent on the waste confidence decision or the temporary storage rule until the court's remand is addressed. Also, earlier this month, the Commission set the course for addressing the remand by directing the NRC staff to proceed directly with the development of a generic environmental impact statement to support an updated waste confidence decision and temporary storage rule. The Commission directed the staff to complete this action within 24 months and to focus primarily on the three deficiencies in the NRC's analysis as identified in the D.C. Circuit's decision. Now, it's certainly never a favorable development to have a court invalidate an action that's been taken by your agency. In both 2009 and 2010, I voted in support of the issuance of what would become the waste confidence decision and temporary storage rule. In comments filed with my vote, I had closed with an excerpt from the court decision in one of the two landmark cases in the 1970s that had created the need for the Nuclear Regulatory Commission to make these waste confidence findings in order to proceed with licensing in the United States. Actually, I had quoted from one of the judges, Judge Tam, had appended a concurring opinion to the court's decision, and the court case specifically was Natural Resources Defense Council versus the NRC. And I had closed my vote in 2009. I'd spent a lot of time on the issue of the waste confidence update and strongly supported the action that we had taken at that time. But in preparation for being here today, I was reflecting on the discussion in the CSIS and the Bipartisan Policy Center and the INL Third Way reports on this same topic of waste disposal. And so stitching those two things together, I first wanted to observe that everything old is new again, and you'll understand that when I read you Judge Tam's commentary. But so in this vein, I thought I would close my remarks this morning with the same quote that I had put forward in voting in support of the waste confidence update. This is what Judge Tam wrote in 1976. NEPA requires the Commission fully to assure itself that safe and adequate storage methods are technologically and economically feasible. NEPA forbids reckless decisions to mortgage the future for the present, glibly assuring critics that technological advancement can be counted on to save us from the consequences of our decisions. Thank you very much for your attention.